Episode number 7 from Staking Summit Dubai 2025. And the next guest on the show is Felix Lutsch, aka Godfather of Liquid Staking, as everyone in this industry knows, and now head of ecosystem at Symbiotic, the second largest restaking ecosystem in crypto. Such a pleasure to have you on. Finally, after I was chasing you for almost a year to talk about Symbiotic, you're now here. Thank you so much for coming on, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Yuri. I'm honored to be number 7, the number of Cristiano Ronaldo and many other great footballers.
Fantastic. Yeah, let's get right into it. What is the current state of the restaking sector? I mean, after last year's tremendous uprun, beginning of 2024, everyone was crazy about it. But yeah, it seems that things have slowed down a little bit, maybe also naturally because the hype was so big. People are a little bit more down to earth. So how are you observing it specifically because you're so active in the ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think obviously like in crypto, not that much happens at times because, we have like 3-4 use cases that exist, like exchanging, lending, borrowing. I guess staking is one of them. And, when something sort of new happens, then a lot of people jump on it. It presents new investment opportunities, potentially new speculative interest. And I think often the hype then gets very big and maybe it is made out to be more in the short term than it can deliver in the midterm. But maybe long term, it will still be the right direction. So I think we're sort of like now past some of the short-term hype, but actually we are already seeing, at least from my view of the ecosystem, some of the initially promised things now also happening. We have like slashing, for example, going live on some of the networks on Symbiotic, and also Eigenlayer having now slashing, and some of the promised use cases that were sort of there to increase the capital efficiency. That's the kind of the core premise of restaking. I think there's like some projects coming and showing up that leverage these capabilities and actually in the long run will probably prove out that this actually works, this concept. But in the meantime, the narrative and the space has moved on to like other greener pastures because like people have like a short attention span and it's infrastructure, right? So infrastructure is actually generally quite boring, and we try to make it interesting with podcasts like this, but it takes time, and it's like a long grind to actually build it if you're building it seriously. So, yeah.
Things cool. Let's speak a little bit about the demand for this infrastructure. Like, again, beginning of last year, there was a big hype around restaking. Now 1 year has passed. How do you view the demand for actually like leveraging the security from Eigenlayer, from Symbiotic? Like how many like proper protocols are there that really, mean it serious and are also, here to stay and also really need the security because they are also heavily used?
Yeah, I think like what we have witnessed and what was always like sort of clear, and at least to people that really understand deeply how these systems work, is that many projects want to ultimately use their own token for their security, and they want to bring value accrual back to their own token, and their own token generally is also valuable because, or at least valuable enough if they are successful because the market prices it high. I mean, probably a lot of the assets are actually overvalued rather than undervalued. So generally, you don't actually have a problem that your own asset doesn't have enough security. Maybe at the very early stage when you don't have a token yet at all, or if you're just really like a very small nascent project. But so a lot of the projects are actually want to use their own token. So I think one of the realizations is that what we are trying to do is we try to like cover the entire life cycle of a protocol and make it so that you can start borrowing security from like other secure assets when you don't have a token yet, but then later you can seamlessly switch to have security from your own token. And maybe you still want to add like other tokens into the mix just to like align with different projects or somehow else, leverage them for other collateral use cases. But I think that was kind of missing before in the shared security space, where a lot of the structures are very rigid. You join the parachain auction and or you're out. There's no like clean way to exit it in a way where, and we've seen that also with Neutron actually on ICS, where now they become a standalone chain. It becomes like you kind of have to rebuild the infrastructure and you have to like kind of make this migration. And it's not very seamless. And I think what we're trying to do in Symbiotic is to like sort of have it be very, very much easy to do on the smart contract level to kind of transition your project to whatever like the needs are of you in the life cycle of your project. But it's all built on like sort of the Symbiotic staking infrastructure. So that's why the term universal staking and what we're trying to do as like just this kind of modular framework for staking. So
and I mean, like ecosystem wise, like what are the projects that you talk to? What projects really want to launch in it? So is it more like that you talk to the Aves in this world that say, hey, we want to have more independency compared to just being a product built on top of a layer 1? Or are you talking more to the layer 2s that seek more external security? Like, what are the conversations that you have? Or are there actually protocols that are completely new and want to start from scratch?
Yeah, it's like a mix of those. I think one of the core use cases that has found a lot of traction, I think, is like kind of interoperability, because we have this fragmented ecosystem, and interoperability needs to be relatively secure. It also like sort of involves different chains, so it kind of makes sense to have a multi-asset security model in this setup. For example, Hyperlane also has a very modular approach to this, where they essentially allow you to launch your own network or your own interop network, and can use your own staking mechanism built on Symbiotic, and they also leverage Symbiotic themselves for their native token staking. So you basically have a lot of these like sub networks with different security assumptions, and the two core primitives like Symbiotic for staking and Hyperlane for the messaging work well together. So like this is kind of something that we see. You could imagine the same thing for oracles, where maybe you have an oracle layer. Pragma actually is one of the projects building on Symbiotic that does this, where they have like the layer 1 for the data aggregate, the data publishing, and then they take, every project can build their own aggregation oracle to publish the data from that onto their own chain. So let's say you're an L2, you have staking from your own L2 token to like sort of bring this oracle data on chain onto your chain, and you can choose the validators that do that and stuff like that. So it's like your choice. And so this sort of setup exists, we see more and more. And then essentially like every project kind of wants their own token to be utilized, or if they're an asset issuer, they also have assets that they issue like Aave A tokens. And ideally, they all want to bring utilities to these tokens, right? So collateral or like insurance use cases, if it's not proof of stake, if it's not like a decentralized network, then maybe like an insurance use case can also be fitting. For example, in Aave, there's umbrella staking, which is not built on Symbiotic, but we're exploring like similar use cases where you could have protection for bad debt events, and basically using Symbiotic slashing primitives to repay when there was a bad debt incident. So like you can buy the insurance for your lending position, and when a default happens, the ones that the delegators or the insurers, the underwriters get slashed and have to pay out to the ones that bought the premium. So like these kind of use cases are emerging. We're exploring some of them with teams in the space ourselves, but there's also like new teams kind of directly building on top of Symbiotic, leveraging the kind of core primitives.
Okay, interesting. No, so there's like also demand for going directly to Symbiotic, right?
Yeah, like I think some of these use cases that there's like stablecoin project, they theoretically have like a lot of need for collateral. So they actually need, again, Bitcoin or Ethereum, because they don't have a token yet, and it wouldn't be big enough for what they're trying to do, which is like kind of like a over collateralized stablecoin, so like in maker style. So in that case, they actually also need the supply side a lot. And then if it works, like they would also be able to pay the supply side because they generate yield on the borrowed assets. So there are some early signs that we can actually make this restaking system work, where they can leverage some of the stake and only pay like maybe less yield because the stake is already also delegated in other proof of stake networks for pre-confirmation or for other use cases that are already in Symbiotic. Of course, it's still early and there's a lot of like co-incentives also going on, subsidizing a lot of this. But it's exciting to see it like sort of shaping up. And then with kind of the vault architecture that I think has emerged as like a primitive in DeFi in general, like also Morpho is using, right, vaults and like sort of this isolated design. You can have actually different strategies, and you have this emerging ecosystem of curators, risk curators like Gauntlet, RE7, MEB Capital, that sort of then build like their strategies and their delegation strategies around the systems. And, you know, they can be differentiated because they might take on different risks to each other. They kind of fall differently on the risk-reward curve. And, you know, some people are more risk-taking and like to go more degen. Others might just want to stake for proof of stake. So we can kind of nicely see that this might be like a differentiated marketplace of strategies in the long run, especially as you look at the multi-chain ecosystem where there is like a lot of different environments.
Interesting. And do you also see it like kind of also as a natural shift, because you have also been relatively active with your past at Chorus One and the Cosmos ecosystem. The sets tend to become smaller and smaller, and you just like a lot of applications just want to have like the minimum level of security and just want to have the peace of mind that nothing breaks, while also having the room for customization. Is this where you see restaking really stepping in, basically for protocols to say, we want to have like kind of the benefits that a Cosmos SDK chain, for example, would have, while not having to deal with validators and all of the other things that come with it? Is that like the sales pitch for launching on Symbiotic?
Yeah, I think, I do think that you still also have the choice, I guess, to just not do staking at all and build like a POA system. And maybe, or like even the rollup, right? The rollup is also kind of an app chain, or should be, right? And then they have just a sequencer, which is all centralized, I guess, but you have the proving mechanism and all these things. But I think you can start like that, and maybe it also makes sense to start like that before, when you want to find product market fit. I know if you're building a crypto project, at some point you want to decentralize, and the only real way to do that is actually staking. All others, like, at least I don't know of anyone else, but like, so, and once you get there, even if it's for a tiny role in your system, then you should have like a system to do that on. I think, probably the mistake of Cosmos was that everyone kind of copied what the Cosmos Hub did and sort of like took the parameters of the Cosmos Hub and like didn't change it. And so everyone ended up with like 100 validators, which was probably like too big for many of the chains. And I think that realization came, or is coming now later, also like just because the economics don't work out. And hopefully like newer teams that are working in this new restaking phase, which is like kind of emerging only, they learn these lessons and they take the sum of them into account. And like from what I see, that is also happening.
Yeah, totally get it. But yeah, what's I mean, like one of the things that differentiates you with Symbiotic from Eigenlayer is that you do not only support ETH for restaking. Your pitch is like to break it down into super plainly simple versus restaking of everything, essentially. Why did you actually decide to move down that path? Was it more a decision because of flexibility and independency from Ethereum? Or do you generally see other ecosystems catching up to Ethereum? So what was your thought behind that?
Yeah, I think it's like a flavor of the understanding that the needs of the network might change over time. And like while like to prove out it should start from ETH, I think that was a great idea. And I mean, props also to Eigenlayer on that. And I think they also came around to the like realization that it should be all kinds of assets that have to be staked. I think in the beginning it was like dual staking, right? Like Eigen, you have to also stake Eigen token. But like realistically, you can force projects to adopt a certain model, but rather you give them the tools to do what they want to do. That's more our approach. We're trying to be unopinionated and sort of be as flexible as possible, that you can like do what you want to do without us imposing certain restraints on you or the protocol. The core protocol should be as flexible as possible. Maybe things that we build on top, like SDK, or if we are starting to build a product, we can be opinionated there, but the core protocol should be as flexible. And that's kind of always the mindset that we started on. So that's why we said like the vault primitive kind of can take any form of collateral. And we'll see what people come up innovating from there, right? I think with the ETH use case, it kind of kickstarted some movement where people were like thinking about, okay, what can I do with this? And now we're kind of seeing maybe also like people, Bitcoin staking, right, is like a big topic, or even like stable coins maybe could be another asset. Of course, governance tokens. Why keep it constrained, I guess, and not have it like be an open modular system?
Yeah, completely makes sense in my view also, because you also don't know what the journey ahead looks for Ethereum. There are also a bunch of question marks right now in the Ethereum ecosystem, so totally see it playing out at the moment. Yeah, basically back to the beginning of this conversation. Again, last year everyone was so crazy about restaking. There were also a lot of other protocols that we don't hear about at all anymore. Not to point out any names here, but I think you know who we're talking about. So can we like maybe reflect on that? So everyone was so crazy about restaking beginning of last year. Now it like slowed down. Was it just way too much hype, way too early, or is restaking undervalued right now? Is it underestimated what it could bring to the ecosystem, or was it overestimated last year? So where are your thoughts on this?
Yeah,
I mean, you're a little bit biased.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a high expectation. I think a lot of like infrastructure investments in general, or like infrastructure projects, have done well in crypto. So I think like restaking sort of captured that well. And maybe there was like a lot of expectation that things would be delivered more quickly, or that the tech is further than it actually was. Also, but yeah, like I said also earlier, it's kind of catching up to that. Like slowly, like we actually have systems that sort of have all the features that you would expect from the system, not just selling the vision, which is great, and that worked well. But now you also need to deliver the product, and so we've been very product focused from the start, and I think have shipped stuff. So now hopefully like the products can speak for themselves, basically, I guess. But I think there might be then another phase where, you know, when those first initial products that found product market fit using restaking actually take off and people are like, oh, okay, so it actually works, it might kick off like a second big phase of the whole thing, which is like, I don't know if it's in the next months or years or when, but like, I guess I hope in a few months to years, with the infrastructure being more ready to like also support the demand, or the like from retail to buy these tokens or whatever. So I think that's actually the same for crypto in general, right? Like at certain phases in the bull market in 2020 or whatever, you had like a lot of promises or like, I don't know, supply chain on the blockchain and whatnot, and everyone buying these ICOs. It's kind of the same thing, just in a sort of microcosm of restaking, right? It's always recurring themes.
Yeah, I think maybe that's like also one important question to ask here is, have you seen any results on the application layer that emerged because of the launch of restaking? Because again, there was also a lot of capital flowing into restaking. So what came out of that at the end of the day so far? Like, were there like any like major things that you would love to point out? Because I really remember this headline from A16Z. They put like an insane amount of money into Eigenlayer. But yeah, like what does the world look like after these huge capital injections?
Yeah, I think some of the first use cases that were very close to the Ethereum core protocol, they actually came to fruition now, like pre-confirmations as a concept that expands like sort of on the MEV pipeline and like sort of the block builder like expressivity, I guess, to say that has actually come around, and that's exciting. I think there's just that wouldn't have been possible without restaking, unless it would have been built like directly into the Ethereum core protocol. But I think it shows that this approach with restaking actually created innovation faster than if it were just to be built by the Ethereum Foundation. And I guess there will be like more of these coming, right? So that are not just necessarily just related to Ethereum as a core protocol, but also oracles, interop, and so on. It's probably, like I said, yeah, it's still early and will probably take some more time, but it's also infrastructure. So like I think the applications, I think we're seeing like the zk-TLS stuff also. I think that's also very interesting, where you take some off-chain information from APIs, sort of bring it on-chain in a provable way, and then leverage that for like a DeFi protocol or for something that's fully on-chain. Well, there it's kind of cool, like credit score, bring that on-chain. You can maybe have under-collateralized lending like 3Jane is doing, or you can, maybe have other like sort of merging of Web 2 and Web 3 primitives. But also there you really rely on actually these nodes that take the data from the API being sort of decentralized and maybe having some consensus or some verifiability that they actually pull the right data. Like you can just have to prove from TLS, but I guess maybe you might still want to have uptime guarantees. You might still want to have like a consensus between nodes that they all sort of bring the same data, just to make sure, like the same with the Oracle, right? You don't want to just have one node post the price, but you rather have like an aggregate price from a bunch of different sources. That's basically what Chainlink does, right? So I think those things are kind of coming to fruition, and people are getting more on the application layer, kind of using those things to then build products. They are financial products largely because that's what crypto is mainly about. So
yeah, and also to see the impacts of the infrastructure layer basically coming to visualization also takes time. You're basically planting seeds and hope that someone else is basically leveraging it. So there's also like some patience, but also risk involved, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like the problem that crypto probably has is that everyone's building infrastructure, and like my infrastructure is better to build on than yours, and no one's building the app. I mean, that's kind of known.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just also like a matter of like the people that are in crypto, and many are like researchers, they're like sort of infra people so far. But yeah, I think there's also a new wave of founders coming that, and now the infrastructure is mature enough. Like you still have to you have to choose your stack, and there's like many, so like that's kind of a hard question. But I think a good founder nowadays will probably be able to like evaluate that quickly and choose one, and will be fine to go with that at least for a while, and maybe has to like reiterate later if they actually become successful, but they can at least get started and sort of prove product market fit of their product fast. And not like be blocked by the infrastructure as hard as like if you were to like build a product in 2020 where like, well, okay, actually I can't even send a transaction here or whatever, like, so we're further.
Question that, how, as a head of ecosystem, how easy is it for you to convince people building on top of Symbiotic? Is it an uphill battle or more like a downhill battle?
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, right? It's like institutional sales in a way where it definitely takes some time. And I think also in crypto, we're like a B2B business in a way. And some of the projects, especially the ones that are successful, they are still like also in an attitude like I can build everything in-house.
Yeah.
So they then doubt that they want to use this external tech, which is also fair, right? Like I think the modular meme has been like there, and like some projects are embracing it, like some of the bigger ones not as much yet, and we're also like kind of part of that stack in my opinion, where like our focus of the staking logic is very narrow, but you still see people building different staking system. I think from my experience in Chorus One, we saw like hundreds of different like staking designs, right? And ultimately like most of them like went away. Some bad ones even survived just because like the underlying chain is so valuable, like Ethereum. I mean, some might say that like Ethereum staking design is a bit crazy in a way, but it also serves a certain purpose that like of maximum decentralization. But then you also see the gains if you just use like a common standard or interface for example, the Cosmos chains, right? Like it was very easy to onboard new validators because they knew how to run the chain and how the inflation and stuff will work. So like it gets easier to bootstrap from there. And I think the same principle applies here, that that's generally helpful. And I think for a lot of projects, it would be better if they just focus on their core, what's their core value add of their product. But I think a lot of the projects in crypto actually don't have that, because they're all like, oh, we're general purpose. Now we're all a general purpose chain. And yeah, that takes conviction and like also expertise in a certain area to say, okay, this is our part of the stack and we know best and you should be building on us for this. And then convincing people that they should do that, that's a long process, but we're getting there. We're doing our part.
Felix, thank you so much for joining. Yeah, it was a very insightful discussion on restaking. Also gives me like a better sense of where we are right now. Again, last year has been a crazy year for restaking. But yeah, I think that generally also what I get from all of these conversation here at the summit is that the industry is maturing. Was had a very interesting conversation with JP about multipliers, revenue-wise, also with Brian. It feels like that we are looking a little bit more stoically at the valuations and about what like how much revenue like each technology can actually generate at the end of the day. So less hype but more maturity, I would say. So yeah, you can really see that happening. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining. And if you are looking into following Felix on Twitter, as always, links in the description below, as well as if you want to find out more about Symbiotic. Thank you for coming on, Felix.
Thanks for having me, Yuri. It was great to chat to you, as always.